Hello, strangers and rangers. Welcome back. It is Toast Ranger to a Stranger here. We are going to be reading my story, Draw Me After You, Let Us Run. I can't tell you how many times I've done this recording. I'm finally officially doing this with a decent microphone. It's not the best by far, but it is the best I have used by far. So we're going to give this a go. And if you do not know, this is a Harry Potter fan fiction that I have spent the last 3 years writing. My intention with these videos is to give you an audiobook version essentially of each chapter. I will try not to pause too often, and if I make mistakes, I'll do my best to fix them. I don't edit things though, so it will be very much one and done sort of deal. So whatever issues do occur will unfortunately be left in stone. And yeah, so the intention is for the first 5 chapters to be available to the public. So I will make them not unlisted, which is how I originally had done this series. And there are, I think, chapters 1 through 3 unlisted elsewhere, but that's on my Patreon, which leads me to the other chapters. If you want the other chapters, you would then have to become a patron. It's $10 a month. I would have hopefully a chapter every 2 weeks at minimum out. Currently, I actually have it set for the first 5 to come out this week, and then 1 chapter per week after that. And currently in the story, there are 54 chapters. So that's a pretty decent backlog of weeks to get through for the year. But yeah, that is the plan. If you are interested, please see the links down below. The link to my blog is there. The link to the story is there. And it's free to the public, of course, because that is what fan fiction is, free to the public. But my videos of it doesn't have to be. Or don't have to be. Sorry, grammar. That is also another thing that and the other link, sorry, is my Patreon. The other thing that I did want to mention is that I will maybe occasionally pause to catch any typos I have left in the story since the beginning, because usually unless it was like extremely egregious, I would not go back and fix it. So I do have a little document here for DMA edits. So if you see me bounce, if I pause to do that, that is what I am doing. So let's jump right in. Today we are just going to be reading the very first chapter. And I will attempt to do voices. Can't promise that they'll be any good, but I will do them. So we'll skip past the summary because it's just in the opening scene. And if you want to read any of the author's notes, if it's super important, I'll read it. And if not, I'll just skim past it. So the flash of spellfire burns past Harry as he runs, red and vicious and singing in the air. The peat and dirt and dead leaves are wet from the constant rain. It makes keeping his footing more difficult, makes dodging a slippery kind of hassle. He grunts as he goes sliding around the trunk of a tree, vaulting quickly over the fallen mess of another as another spell is hissed and cast and tossed at his back. Clothes soaked, hair in his face, Harry Potter runs. There's mud on his shoes and his jeans, and he thinks maybe his face. He longs for a warm shower as the cold seeps into his bones despite the burn of his legs and his lungs. He just has to go a little faster for a little longer, just has to get through the clearing he sees ahead of him. It's instinct and the reflexes of years, a childhood, an adulthood, that kept him from going over the sheer drop on the other side of the tree line. A cliff face. A fucking cliff face. Harry slides, drops onto his back and claws at the wet earth to slow his momentum. Feels the debris of the forest seep into the folds of his clothes. Feels a rock slice across his palm as he clutches it and comes to a stop with his feet hanging over the edge into nothing. There is a crack of apparition behind him. Harry grunts and drops his head back, unaware or perhaps uncaring of the mud and muck that clumps into the mess of his hair. Harry Potter, comes the soft, sibilant hiss of a voice he has heard in his dreams, in his nightmares, in his waking hours for years. Slowly, carefully, Harry twists over and pushes up onto his hands and knees. He stays there, short breath fogging in front of his face, and his pursuer lets him. Harry has no doubt of that. He's being allowed this respite, this small moment to catch his bearings, his heart pounding in his ears, blood singing. It seems I have finally caught you. Harry Potter barks out a laugh, head tilting and twisting to stare at the man standing at the edge of the forest. He looks untouched by the elements, but Harry knows better. Can see the small tells, the open robe, black as pitch, the muddy boots, the faint flush of his cheeks, his ears, his knuckles, as he clutches the bleached white wand at his side. Voldemort stares him down with red eyes, hardly out of breath, and still looking completely winded from the chase. As Harry rocks back, sitting on his heels with his hands on his knees, he offers a smile that holds no kindness. Voldemort's grip on his wand grows impossibly tighter. Don't, he hisses. But Harry is already clicking his tongue. Sorry, Tom, he says. Better luck next time. And then he pushes himself off the edge of the cliff. Scene break. When Harry was very young, he learned very quickly how to run fast. You have to learn fast when there is no one to hold your hand and teach you the ways of the world. When it is just you and your two large hand-me-downs with a bruised face and a pack of bullies at your back. When it is just you curled up in a cot at night alone under some stairs. Harry learned very fast, very young. So when the time came and he looked Lord Voldemort in the eye, a crystal ball glowing in his hand, he knew what to do. Scene break. It is not the night that his parents died that this begins. It is not in a basement surrounded by fire, a stone burning in his pocket. It is not in a chamber with a girl and a diary and a snake. It is not even in a graveyard, a friend not long dead beside him. It is in a headmaster's office, with sweat cooling on his skin, with his shouted plea still ringing around the room as Albus Dumbledore refuses to meet his eyes. It is with a splitting headache and a rolling fear that he just saw someone die, that he'd felt it and relished it, and it is with a hate so profound that it almost wrecks him. Tell me what's happening to me, Harry says again, breathless and trembling. I don't want to feel like this. And that small admittance seems to give the headmaster pause. The door opens somewhere behind Harry, but Dumbledore holds up his hand to still whoever is there, to stop them. Then, with a great amount of care, Dumbledore sits and sets his hands on top of his desk, tilts his head down, and peers at Harry over the edge of his glasses, meets his eyes, holds his stare. My boy, he says, whatever do you mean? Trouble. That's what the Dursleys always said he was. That boy is nothing but trouble. Harry hadn't wanted to believe them, hadn't thought he did anything particularly troublesome most of the time, but somehow he always ended up in the cupboard anyways. The trouble seemed to follow him, though, to Hogwarts. He remembers getting in trouble, causing trouble, and even one memorable moment in first year when Snape looked down his nose at him and called him trouble. Perhaps Harry thinks he is trouble. Perhaps he thinks that's why it always seems to find him. Scene break. Dumbledore is no longer sitting. He's in front of his desk, his hands folded in front of himself, staring down at Harry with a pensive expression, wrinkles making the folds of his worried face stand out all the more. Harry is still shaking. He's not cold anymore, not with a blanket over his shoulders that Dumbledore summoned for him, not with a half-empty cup of tea cradled in his hands. But still he trembles, his eyes burn, and he does not understand this hate in his chest. It is not his. He doesn't want it. Tell me again, Harry, what is it that troubles you? Dumbledore says, soft and coaxing, and Harry wets his lips. I don't know how to explain it, sir, Harry says. I just hate everything. I hate myself. And that, perhaps, is the most worrisome. Because, while Harry has always felt less than, it has never been so truly and painfully intense. It has settled unsettlingly behind his back molars. It creeps in him like something black, like something alive and waiting to consume him. Dumbledore stares at him some more, a hand coming up to stroke at his long beard, and Harry watches the movement in a daze. And do you normally hate yourself, Harry? Harry wants to say no. He has the lie right on the tip of his tongue, but he can't quite manage to spit it out. His chest aches. Instead, he lowers his eyes, shrugs, and says, Not like this. Dumbledore makes a sound. It's a terrible, sad thing, and it makes Harry look up into the face of his professor to see something so profoundly wounded. That, too, makes him ache. My boy, Dumbledore breathes, and he crouches before him, hands settling over where Harry's are clutching the teacup in his lap before he can even protest. I am so very sorry. His eyes are burning again, and Harry tries valiantly to blink it away. It's not your fault, sir. No, not entirely. Dumbledore nods. But the blame is on my old shoulders either way. Harry opens his mouth to deny it, and Dumbledore holds up a hand. Hush now, Harry, and listen. So Harry does. Scene break. It does not take much to create hate. A bit of negligence here, a sprinkle of pain there. Fear, loneliness. Just a bit, just enough, and the heart turns cold. Scene break. Years ago, there was a young man a lot like you who walked these halls. A lot like you in many ways. Dumbledore is still kneeling, still holding Harry's hands. Harry shifts. I think I've heard this one, Professor. Dumbledore smiles. Yes, I suppose you have, haven't you? Tom Riddle was a brilliant young man. His potential was boundless, infinite. Infinite. Sorry. Infinite. He could have done great things. He has done great things. After all, he who must not be named did great things. Terrible, yes, but great. It's been years, but Ollivander's words still ring true in Harry Potter's head. Terrible, but great. While I do not wish to bore you with a story you've heard before, Harry, I do think it is important that I confess something to you. Dumbledore continues, and Harry blinks down at him and nods and is rewarded with a kind smile. You see, Harry, Tom Riddle was so very much like you. Strong, driven, brilliant. Harry snorts at this and feels chided when Dumbledore's face pinches with something like guilt. You are brilliant, Harry. Perhaps not like your friend, Miss Granger, but brilliant in all that matters. Courage, kindness, and an impossible, wonderful, profound ability to forgive. Dumbledore says it as if it's some kind of truth, and Harry wants to believe it. But it appears very much like Tom, you also have a great deal of pain within you. You say that like Voldemort still feels this way, like he feels anything, that he feels this. Harry's voice breaks as he realizes how close he was to shouting, and he wets his lips and closes his eyes. That he feels this alone. Oh, Harry. Dumbledore sighs, and long fingers brush aside the mess of his bangs, fingertips barely touching the swollen red numbness of his scar. Why do you think all this self-hatred comes from? Scene break. A boy in a cupboard, a boy in an attic. Both unwanted, unloved, freakish. Scene break. Harry sits and listens. Sits and drinks his tea and listens. Listens as Dumbledore tells him of the orphanage Tom Riddle was found in and sent back to over and over. Listens as Dumbledore tells him of the way he was belittled, singled out, isolated from his peers because of his blood, his intellect, his name. Listens as Dumbledore tells him how a boy without friendship, without love, grew into a man without. After all, Dumbledore says, clutching at one of Harry's hands, who could love the monster that could not love himself? Harry squeezes his eyes shut. I am so very sorry, my boy, that I did not see it all sooner. Harry's voice breaks as he sobs, shatters into tiny pieces as he curls over on himself, empty teacup forgotten for the ground, tears hot and unrelenting down his face as Dumbledore takes him into his old arms and holds him close, cradles him there on the floor of his office until Harry can cry no more. Why? Harry's breath hitches. Why are you telling me this? Dumbledore sighs, and Harry feels it move his hair. He clutches at the purple of Dumbledore's predictably garish robes. Hold on. Excuse me. I need to make a quick note of that one. Because, Harry, one of the biggest regrets in my life is not reaching out, not helping that boy when he needed it most. And I will not repeat that mistake twice. What do I do? Harry asks, voice trembling with something a lot like fear. What can I do? Well, Dumbledore pats his shoulder. I believe some chocolate would suffice for now, and perhaps a good night's rest. Helplessly, happily, Harry laughs. Scene break. Fear is so hard to overcome when one is alone. It is a little easier, however, with someone to hold your hand. Scene break. Cleaned up and drained, Harry sits across from Dumbledore. There are chocolate wrappers all over. Harry thinks Remus would get a real kick out of this. Dumbledore seems to be giving Harry time to think, to process. He is not stuck here, he knows, and thinks perhaps he should take pity on his old professor and allow them both some sleep. But he is on the precipice of something. He can taste it, can feel it in the air. Trouble, he thinks. What can I do? Harry finally asks again, in the hush between them, the only other sounds, a clock chiming somewhere and Fawkes preening on his stand. How can I? He almost says help. He very nearly says fix this, fix him. Dumbledore smiles at him from behind his desk like he already knows, and Harry thinks that he probably does. Once again, your ability to forgive astounds me, Harry, Dumbledore says, though I do not believe this can be fixed. I have to try, Harry says. No one should feel like that. It's not living feeling like that. No, I suppose it isn't. And you would help him? Dumbledore tilts his head, peering at him over his glasses again. This is not a boy anymore, Harry, and he has done terrible things. He killed my parents, Harry says. He killed Cedric. I know what he's done. Yes, Dumbledore nods, breathing out long and stroking over his beard. And you would still help him? I would try. Dumbledore's eyes take on that eerie, wondrous twinkle as he peers over at him. His mouth twitches into a crooked smile. Yes, I suppose you would, and I dare say you might even be stubborn enough to succeed where I have failed. Harry barks out a little laugh. Dumbledore's smile broadens a bit. So, Harry breathes out, careful and slow, steeling himself. What can I do? Dumbledore stares at him for a little while longer. On his desk, there's a chessboard unlike Harry has ever seen. Is that correct? Yes. On his desk, there is a chessboard unlike Harry has ever seen, layered with pieces gleaming and polished on each level. Dumbledore waves his hand, and Harry sees the pieces begin to move. Then Dumbledore leans forward. Tell me, my boy, Dumbledore says, have you ever heard of a Horcrux? Scene break. There is no good, there is no evil, only power. Knowledge is power. End of chapter 1. So that is the finished chapter 1 read for you guys. I am going to go ahead and cut things off. I don't want to get too loud just in case people are using this as like, I don't know, like an audiobook to go to sleep to. I feel bad already about the clap snap that I just did. But again, I cannot edit, do not know how, and I unfortunately just don't have the time to learn. So one and done is how we're doing it. I hope you enjoyed the read through of chapter 1 of Draw Me After You, Let Us Run by To a Stranger, me. I will get chapter 2 out as soon as I can. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.